Welcome to the channel Tribe. In this session of Tribecast webinar, we are having Filip Hric discussing on full circle testing with Cypress.
Hi everyone, how are you doing today? Welcome to the webinar on full circle testing with Cypress by Filip. I would like to give a huge shout out to BrowserStack, our exclusive sponsor for all community events and our premier sponsor for all the conferences. We thank them for their support, and now I would like to welcome our speaker for today, Philip. He is a Cypress ambassador, and who better to talk about a tool than an ambassador for that tool? So Philip has worked with Cypress uh, from a very early stage when Cypress was a new tool. Philip has worked with that with Cypress, and today he is going to give us some insights and some knowledge over the tool. So I would like to call Philip up on the stage. Hi, Philip.
Oh, you can see me, hear me now. Thank you for the introduction. So yeah, shall we start?
Yes, you can take over now. It's all yours.
Awesome. So let me share my screen, because I do have a presentation. Although I'm not very big on slides, I'm more on the code side of things. So I will be showing you some codes today. So yeah, hello everyone. My name is Philip, as it was mentioned. I'm a tester with developer skills, or maybe developer with testing skills, depends on how you look at it. But basically, what I try to do is to teach testers about web development and to teach developers about testing. As it was mentioned, I am a Cypress ambassador, which means I talk about Cypress a lot. And I love to teach people to use this great tool. And if you want to connect with me either on LinkedIn, you can find me on my name, or through Twitter, you can do so. My handle is in here. Plus, I filled out my profile on this platform, so you can reach out to me over there as well. Plus, you can find everything on my website. So hopefully you'll pay a visit to that. And yeah, so let's start with the topic of today. I see that many people in the audience would love to learn about Cypress this year, and I think it is going to be a great year for Cypress. I'm already excited about all the stuff that's being prepared. A lot of things are going to improve, and I'm really looking forward to that and sharing that with the world. So let's jump into the topic of today, which is sort of a big topic, and it's sort of pinches of different areas and different ideas of what you can do with Cypress. I will have, as it was mentioned on the workference, I will have a workshop on how to start with Cypress. So all of you who want to start this year, I think that will be a great opportunity for you. Also, I have a link at the bottom of the page, philiphric.com/workshop, where I have my very next workshop that's starting next week. So if you want to attend that and get like a full experience of Cypress, then you can join that. But if not, I'll see you on the workference. So let's start with the topic: full circle testing with Cypress. What is this? What does it mean, full circle? Well, to be completely honest with you, it's a term that I have made up. It's not nothing official. It's something that I created for this presentation, but I do have an idea which I want to present to you today. That's behind this. So let's start with a circle. So you probably already know the thing called a testing pyramid, right? The shape where we have unit tests at the bottom, and then we have end-to-end tests at the top. On my circle, I'm actually going to start with end-to-end testing at 12 o'clock, right? So, so you probably know Cypress being a great end-to-end testing tool, right? Let me show you a test and how it looks like in Cypress. So I have my VS Code, my editor, here on the left side in here, and here's a test. And on the right side, I have Cypress window automating my application. So I have this Trello application. So maybe you know Trello, maybe not. It's sort of like a Jira board if you're familiar with Jira. And it's basically it's a to-do app, right? And inside this to-do app, you can create these cards or to-do items, and you can organize them into these lists, and all of the lists are in a board. So in my test, I'm navigating through my application. I'm creating a new board, and I'm creating a new list and a new card. So that's what I do here. Now, whenever I open Cypress, Cypress is going to open a browser, and within that browser, it's going to run my end-to-end tests. Now, for those of you who have never seen Cypress syntax, you can probably already tell by looking at the code what the test is doing. It's very intuitive. It's very easy to read. So you see it's getting some selector, some first board, then we are typing something, then we are clicking, we are hitting enter key. It's really nice to navigate, which makes it great for writing tests and debugging. So when I'm writing tests, I'm using this UI. So this is a real browser. When you write a test in Cypress, you open a real browser, and inside the browser, you can see the application you are testing, and you can see your test script. This test script, it actually works as a timeline. So if I hover over different states of the test, I can go back in time, travel back in time, and debug what was happening at the time of my test. After the test is finished, I can still interact with my application, so I can create another card, and I can keep debugging, looking at the application, interacting with it, which makes it really, really great when you want to either fix your test or you want to write your test, etc. So let's see what happens when you are using Cypress for end-to-end testing, and there's an error, right? So let's do something. I'm going to change my selector, and I'm going to make a typo, right? So I change this, and it's going to fail. So as soon as I hit save, the test is automatically going to rerun and run the script for me. And as you can see, Cypress does not fail immediately, but it sort of has this timeout. So Cypress is built for modern web applications, which are re-rendering all the time. There's APIs at work. Things are dynamically changing. So Cypress takes that into account. And when it doesn't find the thing right away, there's a 4-second timeout to sort of like an upper limit for when Cypress tries to find something. So in this case, it was trying to find a selector, but since I changed the selector for something that doesn't exist in my application, it has tried for 4 seconds. Whenever an error happens, Cypress is really precise for giving me the information about what happened, where it happened. So you can see it actually highlights the part of the code where the error happened. So it was trying to run the cyget command, and it was doing so, but then eventually it failed. I can look into the stack trace, and I can even print that into the console. So since we are in a real browser, when I open the console, I can either see the error, but also for every command there is, I see detailed information. So for example, this get command, which is a command for selecting an element on page, is going to print out the details on what was the selector, what was the command, and what was the element that we have actually found, and how many elements we have actually found. So working with this and debugging your test is really, it makes your life much, much easier. Also, if you travel back in the timeline, you can actually get to some some parts of your application which are like hard to select. Have you ever tried to find a selector for an element that just appears and then disappears? It can be really painful, right? So if with Cypress you just go to the point of your app when that element has appeared, and you can just grab the element and find the right selector for that. So it makes your life much easier. So yeah, let's fix the test. I'm going to just put the thing back, and when I save my test, it is automatically rerun, and now it's green, and we're happy. Uh, as you can see, Cypress runs our application. It tests our application in the environment where it is supposed to be tested, right? It's inside the browser. That's where our users use the application. That's where it should be tested. Plus, since we are in the browser, we can get sort of closer to the application. So you can see that indicated over here, because not only we can see our commands, but we can actually see our API calls as well. So Cypress kind of invites you to examine your application and to understand its nuts and bolts. And the great area to start with that, to check out your application and see what's actually happening there, is exactly these API calls, which incidentally is another part of our circle. So API testing. Cypress is a great tool for API testing. Let me show you what I mean. I have a test in here that's called API. So I'm going to open that in my VS Code, and I will open that in my Cypress as well. So I have this nice little sidebar here where I can look at all of the specs that I have in my repository. And let's run the API. All right. So in here, I'm using this cy request command, which is going to trigger an HTTP request. So as you can see, we are triggering the post method to a URL of API boards. And here's the body, the thing we are sending towards the server. So in our Trello app, we have these boards, which I'm creating in here. And I have a very simple but very compact API test. So I'm checking out whether the status that's going to be received back from the server is equal to 201. So it's very nice, very readable, and you can sort of build a whole API testing suite on that. So the only thing that's kind of doesn't sit too well is that we have this whole blank area over here, which is not really used when we are doing pure API testing. So this is where, again, Cypress kind of shines, because Cypress is open source. And with that, it is really opened to the community and to the contributions of the community. And you can expand lots of functionality with plugins. You may have heard that Cypress doesn't support some areas of testing. Well, with the community around Cypress, many people are contributing to solving different kinds of problems. It would be kind of hard for Cypress team to focus on every area and every application there is, but the community can help with that and help out. So, for example, the API testing, I have also contributed and have created my own plugin. Maybe I can find it over here, npm.js. npm.js.com, I believe it is. Yeah, and it's called Cypress Plugin API. Let me search for that. Hey, here it is. So this plugin actually helps you with your API testing. The punchline of this one is imagine Postman, but in Cypress. So what I'm doing with my plugin over here is that I'm using this empty space and showing you and I show you the response, request, and all the details about the HTTP call. So what I'm adding here is am adding a new command to the Cypress library. So we saw cy-get, cy-click, cy-type, cy-request, and now with my plugin, I'm adding cy-api. When I use that, it works exactly the same as the request, but it adds a little bit of extra stuff in here. So you can see the method and the URL, the body that has been sent. Plus, you can check out the response, headers, cookies, etc. Basically, all the information that's in there. Plus, it gives you some nice styling in the timeline. So be sure to check that out if you're interested in API testing. So we have UI testing, we have API testing. So what we can actually do is we can combine these two. The really cool thing about using HTTP requests in a Cypress is that it's not triggering the API calls from the browser, but it will do it from the node environment. What this means is that that you are not going to run into like very complicated coarse cross-origin issues, and you can access any API you want. So what that enables you to do is to, for example, do email testing. So let's see. Let me show you what I mean. All right, so this test kind of went pretty fast, but let me walk you through that. So in here, I'm visiting a sign up page. On that sign up page, I have this nice little checkbox in here where it says send me a welcome email. So if you tick off this checkbox as you do a sign up on my application, it will send you a real email to your inbox. Now, how would you test an email? If you have ever tried to access Gmail through some automation tool, you know that those guys at Google have things figured out, and they don't really like robots entering their page, and they have lots of security measures in order for that to not happen. So to help us out, we have these different services that are quite helpful. Maybe you heard of Mailsour or SendGrid. I believe there's a service like that. Basically, it creates a inbox which is accessible through API. So the service I'm using in here is called Test Mail. The reason I chose this one is that it's I think it's free. Or it's free up to a quite a generous limit. So that's why I chose this one. But what I'm doing is I'm calling cy request to that service. I have some API key, etc. And what I'm doing here is I'm checking the inbox whether the email has arrived. And when it arrives, I'm checking its contents. So I'm looking to the body emails and I'm looking at the subject of the email and testing whether the subject of the email that was sent through this application is the correct one. So if I go ahead and run my test again, fill out the form, check the checkbox, you probably didn't even see because it's so fast. And when I signed up, I sent this request and was waiting for the email to arrive. And then when it arrived, I checked the subject of that email. So yeah, this is like a great combination of using UI and using API to create a really nice end-to-end test and to basically test the whole flow without going, to like third-party service or trying to hack Gmail into showing your emails or something like that. So yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, so Cypress is really the cy request command is really powerful. But you probably noticed, actually, I have pointed this out, that you can see this API calls as we are interacting with the application, and Cypress is really like watching for those, and it is a great area of testing as well, which brings me to another point into our circle, and that's network layer testing. So this is also something that Cypress can do. And it really enables us to take our testing into another level. So let me show you what I mean. Let's go to the network testing. And in here I have two tests, so I'll show you both. Let's do network. All right. Okay, so this test is failing. And the thing that's happening here is that I'm testing my request, the one that happens when I try to click on element and type in. Wait, it seems to have failed for a different reason. Oh, okay, now it's failing for the right reason. Okay. So Cypress is watching for these HTTP requests that our application does, right? So modern web applications usually use REST API or GraphQL to communicate with the backend, to communicate with the database. Basically, they send data to the database, they grab data from the database. Basically, they're in the communication all the time, right? And what Cypress enables us to do is to watch for those requests and actually work with them. So in here, I have this command called intercept. And this command, basically what it does is it is telling Cypress, hey, watch for a request that has a post method and will be sent to API boards URL, and watch for that to happen. And when that happens, we'll do something with that. So I'm creating an alias to sort of give a name to that request, and I call that create board because it happens when you create a board. So it will trigger a post request to the URL of API boards, and it's actually highlighted in the timeline here as well. So when I interact with my application, when I create that board, type in the name of that board and hit enter, that's when the create board request will actually happen. So what I'm doing here is that I'm sort of catching that request as it flies away to the server, and then I'm testing it. So I'm combining UI and API test, but in this case, I'm not the one. I'm not doing sort of like a Postman style testing. I'm not doing the API testing where I'm the one creating the HTTP request. Instead, here I'm observing the application and see the application trigger that request, and I'm actually checking if it's doing a good job. And this is a place where I found out, hey, it's actually not doing a good job, because when I'm at this point of my test, so I'm getting that element, the name of your first board, I'm hitting new board, I'm typing the text new board and hitting enter key, it will actually send the enter key to the server as well. And you can see that in the error message that's over here, because I'm waiting for that request to happen, and I'm checking the request body. So I'm basically checking what my application is sending towards the server. And it's actually not sending the new board text, but it's sending new board /n. So it's just sending the enter key as well. And this is no good because I'm polluting my database with some empty symbols, which can create a whole lot of mess. And that's no good. So what I can do in Cypress is to check my API call and check whether it is sending the proper data. Well, not only that, the intercept command is really powerful, and I made a course just on the intercept command because it's just so cool. It not only allows you to check the API calls and test them, but it can sort of allow you to change the response. So you can kind of like cut off your server and provide your own response. You can change the response body, you can change the response status, and you can even change the delay of how long it will take for the response to come back. And this is exactly what I'm doing here. So let me show you my test again. When it's loading data, I have added a delay, and this will show this is taking too long message, which normally would be a really hard thing to test because I need a slow network in order to be able to test it, let alone write an automated script for that. But in here, what I'm doing is I'm using this built-in reply function where I'm editing the delay. I know it may look a little complicated, but I promise it's not that complicated. But basically, what this piece of code is doing is adding that 10-second delay. When that happens and I run my test, you'll see that it's loading data for 10 seconds. And now it's showing the message, and I can click on that, make sure that it actually will do the reload. I can write mock data. I can do dynamic changes to the data. Basically, Intercept is so powerful that it can take you to almost any part of your application and make sure it is well tested. All right, but network stubbing is not the only way of how we can look at different states. One of the great examples of what we can test with Cypress is the app layer testing. So we can actually dive deep into the code of our application and make sure that it works well. So let me show you what I mean. I'll go to my next test. That's app JS, CYTS actually. All right. And yeah, so in this example, I want to show you something that's called app actions. You may have heard about those. Sometimes they're confused as an alternative to page objects. I don't think that's what they are really, although they have some common properties, but they are actually a thing that are taking the advantage of the fact that our tests are running in the same context as the app we are testing. So let's put our developer hat on for a moment, and let's take a look into our code. So in my code, I have this store TS file. Now there are a lot of imports here, but what this essentially is like a central storage for my application. So whenever I change the state, or I navigate, or I have some data, or want to change something about the data or something about the state of the app, it's all saved here in this use store variable. So if I take a look into here, you can see that there are lists, there's a loading that can be set to true or false. There are loading errors and notifications and stuff like that. Basically, every state of the app is in here. Now, what I'm doing here is that whenever we are in the context of Cypress, whenever the Cypress is running on the window, basically, in other words, whenever we are testing with Cypress, I want to expose this use store, this constant that has all of the state of the app. I want to expose that and add it to a variable window store. Now, what this means is that when I'm testing with my with Cypress, and I want to when I'm testing with Cypress, I can access the window and I can take a look into that store. And what this enables me to do is to call different methods that are in the store TS file. So I can, for example, get the board list. What my application is doing when I'm opening it is that it is triggering an HTTP request with the method of get and the URL of API boards. What this will do is it will get all of the boards, all of the items that it should render on this page from the database. Now, what I'm doing here is that I'm visiting the page, so that's going to load all of the boards, and then I'm using request to create a new item in that database. But of course, my application is not going to load those, not going to do another request for me whenever I want. So instead, I can go into the application layer and trigger the application doing that again. And that's essentially what I'm doing here. So I'm accessing the Windows Store and I'm invoking the function which normally triggers the HTTP request. So I'm accessing the internals of the application to get to a certain state. Now I'm pausing this test in here because I want to demonstrate that. But if I go step by step and hit the request and then hit the window, invoke the store, and hit the get port list function, is going to trigger my HTTP request again. Now, okay, so we're jumping into like really, really advanced stuff in here. And that's mostly because we are doing the access to the application code. Now there are a lot of things we can do with that. It's we can change the state. We can make the application do stuff for us in order to either get to an edge case or to test something that's really hard to get to, like a very complicated state, which would require us to like create very complicated data or do several steps to get into that. But we can even go even further and take a look into the code even deeper and take a look into our application and break it down even to smaller chunks. Now, you may have heard about this feature that's in Cypress that's called component testing. Basically, what it does is it can take an individual component and you can test that component in isolation. So in here, I have an example of where I have loaded this save button component. So this is how a component looks like. This is sort of a building block. If you imagine your application being a Lego set, then this would be a single Lego piece, the component. It has the template, so it's just a button with some classes in here. There's a button text, which is something that's dynamic. And there's a script, which is going to make our button dynamic. So here we have properties, which has a default state, which will be the save, and it's a type of string. So we don't have to talk about that. But in here, I have my component test, which is going to mount just my save button. So from all of the Lego blocks, I'm taking the single one and I'm mounting it in my test. So as you can see here, I have my add list. So it's a button with the text of add list. And what I have done here is that I have put this add list text in a variable and passed it into the properties of my button. So basically, what's rendered here is going to get rendered in my button. So now I'm adding add list. So let's do hello test tribe. And when I do that, it's going to save. I thought it was going to rerun. It didn't do that. So let's make it run manually. And you can see the component being showing the text hello test tribe. So the best thing about this is that we are rendering our component in a real browser, again, in the environment where it is supposed to be running. We can interact with that. So if your components use API, you can use the intercept, or you can stop the API as we have just shown. You can test different states. You can do all of the above, mutate the state of your app in which your components needs to be. Or you can decide to render multiple components at once and see how they interact with each other or react to different states. But honestly, if you are rendering multiple components at once, you are sort of going back to the end-to-end testing, and you have completed the full circle. that's kind of the end of my presentation, and I felt like I just go smoothly to the Q&A.
So
Yeah,
let's take some questions now. We have a lot of them. So the first
awesome.
question we have is from Matt, and he's asking, how do you deal with third-party auth apps?
Oh, that's a great question. So there are this points out to like a long-standing problem of Cypress, where Cypress was focused on you testing your application and didn't really concern the third-party apps. Like basically, the main difference between Cypress and maybe tools like Selenium is that Cypress was built for you to test your application, whether when it's a third party server. This is not something that you own, and shouldn't really be automating. But of course, if you have a third party auth app, you need to log in somehow. So there are multiple ways of how you can do that. You can either try to do the login programmatically, right? That was kind of a go-to solution for a couple of probably years even, and there are very good examples of that in the Cypress documentation. As I have shown in my presentation, with CY request you can access basically anywhere. So if you can use CY request to do the third-party login, then you are good to go. Another thing that was really released with Cypress version 12 is that Cypress has now enabled accessing multiple origins. This was not a limitation that was there on purpose. It was actually by design, and it needed quite a lot of effort to make it right and make it well. And it's now out there in version 12, so you can deal with the third party login just quite easily. One thing I would point out is that the CY origin, so that's the name of the command which allows you to go to a third-party server, is closely coupled with another command that's called CY session. So if you have like a Google login or Okta or something like that, and you want to log in, if you log in every of your, say, 100 tests, they're not going to run because you're going to hit the rate limit and CAPTCHA will turn on, etc. With CY session, what you can do, you can sort of take a snapshot of the state of the browser when it was logged in, and you can use that snapshot in all of your tests. So in the eyes of the third-party auth server, you just do a single login and then use that login for all your tests, which makes it really, really effective because you really don't want to log in before every of your tests because you're going to hit that rate limit. So yeah, that was quite a long answer to a simple question. I tried to make it more brief.
Yeah, but I think that answered Matt's question really well. So thank you for that, Philip. We have another question from Lighty. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Why would you invoke the global functions from the app? Isn't tight coupling the test to the app and anti-pattern?
I wouldn't say so. I never heard that it would be an anti-pattern. Like you don't want to like test implementation details. And I think that's the anti-pattern. But tight coupling test to the app. Honestly, it has really proven in my experience, it has proven to be like really good. It has advantages not only for like test stability, but also what it as a really nice side effect, it sort of coupled testers and developers together as well, because we were working on that test code together, and it was concern of us all to make sure those tests are running well and are stable. So even invoking things and exposing the global functions was something we agreed on, and it actually improved the testability of our application quite a lot. So I think it's all win. Don't think there were any downsides to that.
Got it. I hope that answers your question, lady. We have another question from RB. He has three questions, I
Mhm.
think.
All right.
I think it's all together. So when we have just Cypress request as a
Mhm.
test, and we run, does that mean it is not launching the browser? Because Cypress will work only with browser.
Uh,
I may be wrong. So that's his whole question.
Yeah, it is. It is launching the browser. So, so yeah, even if you have CUI request, and I said that CUI request is run from Node, it is still going to run open the browser because that's by design. That's what Cypress was built for, to run your test in the browser. So I would say like that might be considered a slight downside, but the what was it? I think it was version 11. There was quite a big refactor in how Cypress opens the browser, and now it's just like the opening of browser, if it's concerned like a performance issue. It is now so fast that you like won't even notice. I believe like there have been massive improvements in that. So like the opening and closing of browser is not that big of a deal. But don't quote me on that because I haven't really done like scientific measurements in there. But I know like there were improvements done in that area.
Got it. I hope that answers your question, RB. We have another question from Jitendra. So he's asking, can we perform cross-browser testing by using Cypress tool?
Mhm. Yeah, so yeah, you can do that. So Cypress currently has support for Chromium-based browsers. So you can test anything that uses Chromium in the background. So that's Google Chrome, that's Microsoft Edge, that's Brave browser, and a couple of others. It also has support for Firefox and for all like Canary Firefox version, and coming in version 10.3, I believe. No, don't remember. Is the support for WebKit, which is the base of Safari browser. It's basically Safari, but minus the Siri integration and Touch ID and stuff like that. So you can definitely perform that. My only advice here would be to make sure that it is done in a reasonable way, because with Cypress you're not really testing the browser, you are testing your application. So if you want to check the compatibility with different browsers, I think you might want to you might not really want to like run 100 tests in Chrome and then run all of those 100 tests in Safari and then those 100 tests in Firefox, etc. I don't believe this is very effective. I would much rather try to focus on the risk of what different browse risks that different browsers bring to the application, as well as trying to look at the amount of users um, using that browser, so you can sort of do the testing really wisely and focus on the biggest risk areas instead of like doing it everything at a very high cost and a lower benefit. So just felt like I needed to add that to the cross browser testing.
Got it, got it. Uh, Thank you, Philip. I hope that answers your question, Jitendra. We have another question from Ronald. His question is, it is also possible to test WebSockets in a way you showed.
Yeah, I think I had a blog on my a post on my blog about this, but it is an older one, so I don't really remember it. But the way I saw WebSockets being used is that they were like it is like a constant connection to the server, right? And through that connection you get different updates. Now in order for those updates to be reflected in your app, they need to be there needs to be some storage. So the part where I was talking about app actions was kind of key to testing WebSockets. So you don't really test the WebSockets, but you test the effect that WebSockets have on your application. So that would be one of the strategies of how to work with an application that uses WebSockets. And but if you were by any chance asking about the intercept command and that being able to test WebSockets, that's not possible. So so yeah, something like that.
Got it, got it. Another question we have from Vishal. So
Mhm.
his question is when to use a side dot request and when to use intercept command.
That's a very good question, because these two commands seem like they do a very similar thing, but they're actually different in the in what they do. My friend Walmir, he's also a Cypress ambassador. He's done a great blog about the difference between these two. But if I were to give you a quick answer to that, is that imagine CY request being like you using Postman. So you are the one that creates the request. You are the one who sets the method, who sets the body, who will take a look at the response, etc. And it's you pressing the button, right? With intercept, you're sort of passive. With intercept, you're not sending anything to the server. You're just watching your application, the application you are testing and clicking and typing and doing stuff with. You're watching the application do the requests. So if I were to assign emojis to that, request would be a rocket and intercept would be the eyes. So maybe something like that.
Got it, got it. A very interesting way of explaining it. So we have a question from Ashwini. Her
Mhm.
question is, can we test mobile web app using Cypress?
Mobile web app you can use. A native mobile application is not possible to use to test with Cypress. So Cypress can test anything that runs in browser. So if you can make it run in a browser, you can test that. So yeah, that's probably the shortest answer.
Got it. We have a question from Dipain. So Cypress is good option to be used for testing app, which is built on cloud platform like Salesforce or ServiceNow.
Mhm.
That's the question.
I don't have experience in this area. My guess would be that not really. But I don't have too much authority on giving a good answer to that. But I think not really.
Got it, got it. So Aksata has a question. How to handle domain switching and redirections to different apps?
Mhm. So I mentioned this with the first question where we talked about CY origin. So make sure you are updated to the version 12 at least, and that should make your life easier. And as far as switching different apps, I when while I was working in Slido, we also had like a one system that had different apps, so you can like post a question, and as admin, you could uh, approve that question or remove that question. And we were thinking about how to automate this flow. Like I have a participant that send a question, admin that approves the question. Basically, what we ended up doing, and it ended up making most sense, is to have a separate set of tests for separate applications. So the admin part, the moderator part, would have its own tests, and the participant part, where the attendees would send the questions, would have separate tests. Now, to deal with the interactions, we would use CY request, and we would use the API calls to either like set up the data or do the actions, create a combination of like the API and UI. So we would call an API as an admin and take a look into the effect on the front end of the participant app. But and it made really good sense whenever we were releasing, because we were never releasing those two apps at once. We would always have like release one app, so make sure those tests run, and then release other app, make sure those tests run as well. So I would suggest like splitting those tests into groups that are connecting to that app.
Got it, got it. So another question we have is from Vikas. How to handle wait without using wait command because it's not recommendable. Default
Mm-hmm.
CMD timeout and page loadout timeout also increased but still
Mm-hmm.
failing.
Yeah. I mean, this is really hard to answer without like directly looking at the code and examining what's happened. Like the default command timeout is, I would actually advise not to put a too big number for that, because that's going to change the default timeout for all of your tests. And if you have like 50 tests and 20 of them fail, and you have 10 seconds waiting for the default command timeout, then you added 20 times 10 seconds to your test run. So rather than doing that, than setting that up globally, I would suggest to do that only like per test. So you can put a test configuration in Cypress. Look for a test configuration in the Cypress documentation, or do it on the command itself. So if you have like an element that's taking quite a long time to load, then just go get the selector and then like timeout and put a bigger timeout in there. Of course, if this is not enough, then I think it's reasonable to talk to the developers and try to debug together and to understand what's happening and why, for example, 10, 20, 30-second timeout is not enough. Because that may be a problem for the user as well. If they have to wait for 30 seconds, the experience is probably not very optimal for them.
Yeah, got it, got it. So we have a question from Dhaval. His question is, how can I start with Cypress
Mhm.
automation if I don't have any coding knowledge? Currently, I'm a manual tester.
Yeah, come to the Workference workshop on how to start with Cypress. Uh, I mean, it's definitely worth to look into the basics of HTML and JavaScript. That can really help you get started. And if you want to start with Cypress, there's also a Cypress Studio. So go to Cypress documentation, look for Cypress Studio or Test Studio. Cypress Studio, I believe the feature is called. Basically, it's a small record and replay tool that can help you to create your test by clicking and interacting. I don't think it will create like a very good test, but it will give you so much valuable information that can inform you to write a good test. And it really can help you get started. I mean, that's kind of how I started. I started with Selenium IDE, where I would just record and replay, and then the replay did not work, so I needed to enhance. And by enhancing that test, I learned quite a lot about the web application itself.
Got it. Understood, understood. We have a question from Jitendra. Any limitations so far you have experienced over other open source tools available?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I'm a big fan of Cypress, but I'm not saying it's good for everything, right? um, we mentioned one limitation, which is the mobile applications, and plus, I would say that it really depends on your strategy of how you want to test, right? As I mentioned, Cypress sort of invites you to come closer to the application code and to understand. It definitely has opened the doors for me to understand the application a little more and to understand what's going on with what I'm testing. And this is what Cypress does, right? And sometimes it's a requirement for you to gather a little bit more understanding of the web application and mechanisms involved in the application function. If your strategy is to write an automation script sort of do like a black box testing where you would just write a scenario of what that browser should do, what that browser should click on and type in. Then you might you might hit a wall with Cypress fairly fast. So for those kind of situations, you might reach for some kind of different tools that automate the browser. So, for example, Selenium or Playwright has been going up recently quite a lot. So I think in those areas it might be easier, but it depends on the really depends on the context of what you need to do.
Got it, got it. We have a question from Rahul. Is
Mhm.
Cypress a good tool for API testing along with data comparison?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe it's a really good tool. I do have an API workshop. I don't have a date right now, but I will give out one fairly soon. And it can be really powerful. You can test your APIs against JSON schemas. You can do all kinds of comparisons and tests. It's really good.
Got it, got it. We have a question from Rishabh. Can I use
Mhm.
Cypress for E2E testing or React web application?
Yes, yes, you can definitely do that. With end-to-end testing, it doesn't really matter what kind of framework your application uses. So it can use React, Vue, Angular, Svelte, vanilla JavaScript, anything will work. For component testing, the story is a little bit different. There, you need to be mindful of the framework you are using. But for end-to-end, it just works.
Okay, okay. I think we'll take one more question and then we can
All
wind
right.
this up. So we have a question from ID. How to deal with multi-tap testing in Cypress?
You try to avoid it. it's I think the author of the question knows that this is not something that Cypress supports. Maybe they will support it in future. We'll see. I don't know. The thing is with the thing I try to explain whenever this question pops up with multi-tap. So if you have a link that you click on, and this will open a new tab. What it does, it's an anchor link. Like if you imagine the HTML tag, you have an anchor link, you have an href attribute pointing to the URL, and then you have a target, which is either underscore self or underscore um, blank or something like that. If it has an underscore blank, what that is, it is an information for the browser to so when a user clicks on that link, it tells the browser, hey, open this URL, but open it in a new tab. So if you decide to split your test, and instead of clicking on that link, you just take that URL and open it in a separate test, or you can open it in the same test, essentially you are doing exactly the same thing. So I would argue the multi-tap is not something that's really missing from Cypress. But again, I don't want to like take take that away. I know it might feel more native, more human-like if Cypress would have that multi-tap support. We're still waiting for that, if that's ever going to happen. But I risk-wise, I don't think that's a concern, and I'm really confident on the fact that this is not really a big risk concern. So yeah.
Got it, got it. I think that was the last question we can take. We have a
All
lot
right.
of questions right now in the chat, but probably we can take it up in the Discord community that we have.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And also, you can reach out to me, as I mentioned, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm
Yeah,
always up
definitely.
for talking. And I also have a Discord on Cypress. If you want to join, you'll find a link on my page.
Great, great. So thank you so much, Philip, for this insightful session. Like, just seeing these questions, I we can probably talk 1 hour more, just taking the questions from the audience. But I think we need to respect the time limit, and we will be ending this soon. So thank you so much for joining this, and thank you so much for your knowledgeful session. And super excited for the work friends workshop now because this was amazing. And even the people joining us thinks that it was great for them.
Well,
So
thank you. Thank you for having me. I really had fun. Thank you for all the awesome questions. I'm sad that I wasn't able to answer them all. But again, if you feel like you're in need of an answer, just feel free to reach out to me. I hope I can get some time and answer that for you. And yeah, maybe I'll do a live stream of the other questions and answer them on YouTube or something. We'll see. But yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me. I had a really good time.
thank you all, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
everyone.